We're back with Untold Stories on a podcast with Erika Maddamma. I got it right because the first time I didn't get it right. I had to ask. And she's with Sunny Spaces Organizing. I got that right? Okay. Professional organizing company. I love organization. I mean, as a business owner, I thrive off of that, and I get frustrated when I'm not organized. But I want you to tell us what you do from your perspective. So I would say you're a professional organizer. But tell me in your words what you do so you can paint a better picture than I can.
Yeah, I mean, professional organizer is a good start, but it's not just organizing. It's really getting to know the families that we work with. So we'll go in and ask a lot of questions. There's almost like a coaching piece that goes along with our first consult. So we really want to understand why your house looks the way it does. What are the activities that are going on a day-to-day basis, because things that might be logical for us to put somewhere may not work for your family. So we're really kind of there to be a listening ear and hear everybody's goals. And then we'll work through the whole process of purging, sorting, categorizing, I guess the things you probably typically think of as an organizer. But the real main goal is to give you a lasting solution that's going to work, that everybody in the family can adhere to, and you're not calling me back in 6 months for a redo. We want you to be able to maintain this on your own.
I think that's the brilliant part of it that I didn't think of, that you can teach someone where something goes, but if you don't understand their lifestyle, it may never get back there after you leave.
Exactly.
It can still be out. I noticed something with my daughter, and it's probably our fault. When she was very little, she would not put stuff away. But when I picked her up from school or preschool, she'd have stuff out, and I'm like, and the teacher would say, "Caroline, your daddy's here." She'd pick everything up and put it right where it belonged. I'm like, who is that girl? How did they do that? So I'm trying to think, how do you do that? So, and I think part of it was everything had a place.
Yeah.
And everybody understood where that place was, and they knew the rules. So we don't have that at our house. So
Well,
it was like
that.
stuff was just everywhere. And like, you put it away when you're done with it. I'm not done with it yet, but no, it was always that little sketchy. No one understands the rules. And when you're coaching someone, I imagine you help them understand why and how their lifestyle can change and be better, but still work within their lifestyle. So you're working. Describe your business. Are you the owner, or you work with other organizers? How does it work?
I'm the owner. I started Sunny Spaces Organizing in 2020, right ahead of the pandemic. Determined to be successful, and that did not slow me down. But we have a team now of 9 other employees. So 7 are organizers, and then 2 are assistants that help answer the phone, give quotes, do our billing. We have help with our social media, all of those pieces. But around Greater Pittsburgh, we have 7 girls that go into homes and help create a better, simpler lifestyle for our families.
So what is a problem you think people have that makes them reach out?
Too much stuff.
Really? Mm-hmm. So
I've never been in a house with too little stuff.
You should come to my house sometime. So when you started a business, what was the kicker that made you say, I need to make a business out of this?
So I've always loved organizing. I'm like this sick little type A personality that probably in preschool I was organizing, my Beanie Babies and my dolls just right. But I can specifically remember Saturday mornings like pulling everything out of my closet and rearranging it just because it was a fun thing to do. That organizing is really therapeutic for me, so it just like leaves me feeling good. There's even days now where I'll organize all day and I'll go home and clean out a closet or something. It just like gives me this little high. So I've always enjoyed doing it, but when I was in college, I took some entrepreneurship classes. I knew I wanted to do my own thing. I knew I wanted to be my own boss and be flexible, and for future kids that I now have two boys, but I knew I wanted to be able to go on field trips and do all the things with them. So I wrote a business plan in college, and I thought I invented this service of going into people's homes and organizing their stuff. So as I did my research, I found out this was actually a real life thing. Yeah. There's a National Association of Professional Organizers, and people really make money doing this. So I said, cool, I'm going to do that.
So you didn't even consider working a job?
Well, I graduated and I did try to get this started, but I had no business experience. I was an event planner major, so I didn't take many business classes or marketing classes. So I actually took a corporate job for about 8 years. I traveled the country, super fun, learned a lot of great things about business. And then in 2020, really after having my son in 2018 was when I was like, I got to do this. I got to change. I can't keep working this 8 to 5:30, being called all the time, high stress. I had a baby to never see my baby. I'm done. So that was really the catalyst of like, I've always had this dream, and really I kind of say Caleb was the one that pushed me to get it started. So.
Oh, that's interesting, because I've heard people say that, if I get this right, the pain of change, the pain of staying the same has to be greater than the pain of change.
Interesting.
So the pain of staying the same, what was that pain? Was it the job? If I stay the same, this is worse than if I quit.
Just go for it. Yeah, I think it was a time thing for me. I felt like I dropped my baby off and then I picked him up and he napped and then he went to bed and I never got to see him. And I just was really affected by someone else's raising my child. And then I also wasn't enjoying my job anymore. I enjoyed it in the early days and then I got promoted. And the more stress and management and numbers and, all eyes on you, it's like, this is not fun anymore.
Yeah. What about the risk aversion? I mean, there's entrepreneurs, two people can see the same thing as riskier than the other.
Sure.
So what risks did you take that other people would have said, I ain't doing that?
My husband was one of them. He's like, what are you thinking? He's like, you make a good salary.
Yeah.
You get, you have a lot of flexibility. You have all this paid time off, 401k, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's not enough for me. I guess I felt like there's more to life than just working and making good money. And we all want to make money and live comfortably and go on vacations. And I was just so determined to not fail. And I think having a child and having a mortgage, it's like, there's no choice. It's not like I'm just out on my own in my 20s and I'll just go back, live with my parents again. Like you have to be successful. Like we're not losing this house because I quit my job. So it just gives you that extra drive.
Did you do that on purpose? Like have that risk there to motivate you? Some people will do that. It's like, if I don't, I fail. This failing is is a horrible option. And that is my motivator.
No.
Okay.
I'm not like a risky person by nature. I don't like to gamble. I'm relatively play it safe. I'm a rule follower. I think it was just like that added drive. And it took me months. I worked full time. So COVID hit right as I launched my business. My first paying client was a college student who lived in Canada, and her mom was driving to come pick her up. And all her stuff had to be packed up before the borders closed for the pandemic. So that was my first client. And then, of course, I didn't have clients for a couple months because no one was going anywhere. But at that time, I was working full-time. Daycare was closed, so now we have an 18-month-old home with us. And I would just get up at 4 a.m, get all my work done. And then during his naps or whenever we could tag team time to ourselves, I would just build this business and get the website up and do all the back-end stuff. And it was just my mission to quit in 2020. And come COVID or whatever else in my path, I was not letting that stop me. So I'm actually coming up on my anniversary. September 18th is when I left my corporate job 3 years ago and never looked back. It's just that time freedom that you gain. And also, I'm not capped. Like, I'm not making what I was making then yet, but I've increased my salary way higher percentages than I would have ever made in a corporate setting. So I just know it's a matter of time. And I think the cool thing is I can rely on my own brain to figure out how I'm going to get there and what's next. So that excites me. I think it's scary for some people, but I think if you have the belief in yourself that you're going to do it, you just find a way to figure it out.
Would people describe you as curious and motivated as maybe the driving factor? You think, but a lot of entrepreneurs are just curious people, and they're driven by curiosity.
And problem solvers too. It's like, well, I know you could live better if you just did X, Y, and Z. Why are we not doing that? I want you to live a good life. I don't want you to be stressed every time you walk in the door. Your house should be this calm, peaceful place for you to just kick your feet up after being out in the crazy world. So if it's not that for you, let me make it better.
I like that. And I think there are people who can do things. Like there are people who are really good at being organized, like you. But making a business out of it is different. I was talking with someone about this the other day. They were looking for a video producer because their video producer wasn't delivering what they wanted, the way they wanted it. So when I see that, I'm thinking there's someone who may be good at the task, but has trouble with the business aspect of it.
Yeah.
What made you confident that you're not only good at being organized, but I can handle a business and grow a business? Like you've got people working with you now, and you're budgeting and you're managing it, which is probably sometimes becomes more than the job of what you're doing.
It does.
It becomes bigger. People don't realize that you want to make cookies, that's great, but making a business making cookies, only 10% of it is making the cookies. There's personal relationship skills. What made you think that you could accept those assignments or those challenges?
Good question. I don't know if I ever thought about it in those words, but I think the 8 years in the corporate world really prepared me very well. I was managing accounts. We worked with Bed Bath & Beyond, I was managing millions and millions of dollars with them, and I managed a team there, so I kind of knew I had that experience to fall back on. Trying to think what else. I mean, I never took business classes. I don't really know a lot about accounting. I'm sort of figuring it out as I go, and I think I've just always known I'll never let myself fail. I think this is like a little mantra that plays in the back of my head, like I'm going to figure it out. There's a YouTube video for anything, so I'll just watch a video and figure it out.
There's a lot of it. You mentioned it, and I always touch on it when we talk with people on this podcast, is that there's a voice in your head. You know, can you identify that voice, what it says, and if it's a good voice? It's the voice you created.
Yeah, the story we tell ourselves.
It can stop you, or it can take you through anything, like COVID or losing your job or whatever. And that little story, sometimes it's the goal you want, but then there's times, has there been a time when you doubted this? I mean, I know you're motivated, but is there a point where you said, man, I never pictured it being like this. I'm having second thoughts.
I remember one December, I think it was last 2021 maybe, we had a really crappy sales month, and I was just like, I remember the first time I thought, wow, I kind of miss my paycheck from the old days, you know, like where it was just consistently rolling in. But that was kind of like a fleeting, I did notice that thought. I do a lot of mindset work too, so I'm really aware of these thoughts, and I'm like, well, that's not helpful.
It's a sign of being an entrepreneur.
Is it?
It's a lot of mindset and position, and sometimes ignorance of failure, but it's a frame of mind.
Yeah, for sure. So I just was like, nope, I'm not going to even entertain that. It was nice when I made those paychecks, but that's not the direction we're moving forward. And I'm just going to figure out what's next. Why was it a crappy month? And what can we do in January to kick things back up again? And I had thoughts again this July. It's like my numbers where I was before and where I am now are way different, but the thoughts are the same. They come creeping back in. You know, I hit $1,000 at one point, and that was like really good. And now 10K is like just okay. You know, you just get to these levels, but the same thoughts are underlying of like, well, we only did 10K this month instead of 15, or, you know, you just start getting in your head about what it means. But I just look back and I'm like, that's funny, because 2 years ago it was like 90% different, and it's
all kind of relative to where you are. You always want more.
Always
where you are, you always want the same. That never changes. It just always goes up with it.
It does.
When you wanted to grow your business, growing your business and working in it every day are two different things. I think when someone says entrepreneur, one definition of being an entrepreneur is you can go away and the business still can grow.
Yes.
When you're not there, it's not your time and labor that's making it happen.
Yep.
You brought on employees or contractors. How did you take that step where I'm going to bring another individual into this and structure that and make that work? Like, is that like more work for you now? Now you're doing less organizing, and now your business, now you're hiring and managing people.
So I think it's shifted, right? So it's, instead of me being in the field every day working with clients, I try to be at my desk more often, which I like equally enjoy the organizing and the business building. I don't, some people are like, oh, well, I left my job so I don't have to sit behind a desk all day. I like it. I think it's fun. It's exciting. You figure out what you can do and creative solutions. So in 2021, I got pregnant with my second son, and I just knew this is a pretty physical job. You're lifting, you're moving, you're hauling stuff around. I was like, I need help if I want this to sustain. So I was able to build that whole year. I think I had maybe 3 or 4 girls that ended up working for me. They're all contracted employees. So everyone's part-time, take the jobs that they want to take, which has worked out really great. It's very flexible. You get your kids on the bus, off the bus. You say no if it doesn't work for you. We just work through that. So my son was born in October. By October, I had, I think, 4 girls working for me, and I took an 8-week maternity leave where the only thing I did was check in and do payroll. I had girls answering the phone, responding, doing consults, billing, the whole shebang. And that kind of was a moment for me. I was like, I kind of made it.
Yeah. when you can find people to help you, that's a stage. I'll be honest with you. I had a hard time with that. There was a point in 2007, 2008 when I brought on 2 part-time employees.
Okay.
And I started getting into the babysitting mode. And I'm like, this is not where I want this to go.
Yeah.
And even when I was working full-time at Channel 4, I was thinking about leaving and starting my own business. And the boss is like, well, you can always move into like chief engineer. I'm like, that's a babysitting job. You know, I'm hiring and firing. I'm not doing anything. So when I have 2 or 3 people ask me, what do I do now? What do I do now? I'm like, this isn't what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So I heard this from one person. it somewhat summarizes what I was feeling. He owned a flooring company. He wanted to work for himself. He kept buying vans and hiring people. And it turns out that now he's not in the flooring business.
Yeah.
He's trying to find work for all these people. He works for them now.
Oh, interesting.
So he's like, and now I got to go find work to keep these trucks moving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not where I wanted to go. I still like my hands on in the business. And I enjoy the business, like you enjoy the challenges of the business. And you accept that there was a transition between now I'm not doing it, I'm managing it. And you find the same enjoyment from managing it is a transition that you have to have, I think, to get to that building stage. And I fought that for the longest time. Another reason I did is because do you feel like if you bring someone on and you teach them the business, they're going to be your future competition?
I had one girl sign a non-compete.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if it would have held up in court, to be honest with
Yeah.
you, but she was really driven, motivated, and young, and I just thought, well, geez, if anyone's going to do it, it's you. So I want to keep you happy and keep you working for me, but I
Right.
don't want you doing this on your own. So not really with the girls that I have. They're really happy to. I think they're not business owners. They're happy to come in. They love to
Right.
organize.
There's a difference. You sometimes as a business owner think everybody wants to be in
Yeah.
business. It's not really true.
And some of the girls, especially if they're a little bit older, like I just want to go to work.
Right.
I'm going to do my
You
thing.
find me
You
the
tell me
work.
what to do, and
Right.
I'm done. I want to be done when I get home. I don't want to come home and do whatever on my computer or do anything extra. So
So you're satisfied from the challenge of finding work for people, and that's fulfilling. Not necessarily doing it. Maybe you do it at home now because you can be an
Yeah.
organizer anywhere. But you can fulfill that need to, like you say, a little dopamine when you're organizing something. It's a stress relief to have everything where it belongs. But you can get that also from home and from organizing your business and working with everybody.
well, that's exactly it. I think because I work a lot on processes and how can we make things more efficient and what
Right.
should our sales funnel really be, and some of these things that before kind of just happened. Now, as we've grown, we need more of a process, and so it's almost just it's organizing the business, exactly what you said. So
Yeah.
it kind of checks that same box for me.
When you are looking for clients, let's say you're doing some marketing now, right? You've got marketing out there, and that's what the people working for you don't have right now. They can't find the work. I've worked with some landscapers who are some friends who the landscape, and I saw this once when I was the same kind of scenario. That and this is always the bad side. There's always the bad side to business that people don't think about. And what was challenging, not to bring up something that may happen, but this was an issue. I was shooting a video for the Do-It-Yourself Network, and they were building a house from the ground up. Electricity, I mean, from taking the trees off the property, to digging a basement, the brickwork, the finishing, the drywall, all these tradespeople came in. And they were all working for the general contractor. And each one of them was being asked to do something on the side. And even this friend of mine who owns a pretty nice landscaping company, he'd bring people in, and then some of the customer would say, hey, instead of going through him, why don't I just work with you? And that's always kind of a thing, that when you bring someone on, you have to establish early on. And maybe you get hit by that once, and you're like, I got to find a way to prevent this from happening. You cannot work with anyone outside of for 2 years or whatever it is. Are you concerned about that? Someone saying, hey, you did it for her, why don't you just do it directly? Would it be cheaper if I just hired you directly?
That happened once. Like a client directly asked one of my
Yeah.
assistants because
They're out there. There's always someone doing that.
and she was good. She was very honest because she would have made more from him,
Yeah.
But she was really honest with him, and she was honest with me, and we didn't decide not to work with that client again. There was maybe some other red flags there as well,
Yeah.
but I feel like I've established us enough as a business that people aren't taking advantage. Not to belittle the contractor story, but it's like, I don't know, you show up, you have this website, you have 10 people, and it really just, I don't know, I feel like we seem really official. I mean, we are, which is amazing. So I feel like we've kind of skirted that so far. But I feel
You're probably gonna have that. It's almost
I was
like
gonna
some
say-
people work it in,
Yep.
and it just people quit and then they go, and you have that. I mean, I've had people do that with me. They've worked with me, and then they took a client from me because I brought them into the project. As a professional organizer, if there was someone watching this, and tell me what kind of problems do you see most people have, other than having too much stuff, and not making decisions? What's the critical problem as a professional organizer you see that is at the root of most of the situations you have to coach and fix? Because you do more than just put it back, like you said.
Right.
You coach. So is it a mental thing? What I don't want to get into psychology too much,
well,
you know,
sometimes
but
it is a bit of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I had a therapist background instead of an event planning. It's doing me no good. But yeah, I think sometimes because a lot of people will say, well, my mom was a hoarder, which, by the way, everyone's definition of hoarder is not what you see on TV.
oh yeah, yeah.
But, you know, a lot of people have a reason, or I think it's back to that story that we
It's
tell
trauma or
ourselves,
something,
right? It's the story that, like, I'm not an organized person. I can't do that. I've struggled putting things back. Oh, I was organized before I had kids, and then they just ruin everything, which I can somewhat relate to, but not because I really instill in my kids. We put things away. Our clothes go in the hamper, and trash goes in the trash. And to me, these are very basic little rules and boundaries that we have to set. But to think of like what the true core is, I mean, I truly believe it is having too many things and then not having a place for these things to go. So that's what clutter is. Clutter is like, oh, well, mail comes in, it doesn't have a designated spot, and so it gets thrown on the counter, and then the lunch boxes come in and they don't have a hook to put them on, so they get thrown on top, and then next thing you know, you have this mountain of stuff, and it feels so overwhelming to deal with that you just leave it till the next day because it's too much.
Yeah, I've heard someone say that clutter is a decision not made, or a decision
Yes,
put off.
I've seen that quote.
Right.
Which is true. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll deal with that later. Like a lot of home offices or guest rooms become this catch-all space.
Right.
Oh, the companies come and just throw it in the guest room. Actually, this weekend I was home in Connecticut and I was visiting my sister who just had a baby. But I had a
congratulations.
client out
You're
there.
an aunt now.
I'm a now an aunt.
Is that
Yep.
the first time you're not?
Yep.
Oh, great.
Yep. Little nephew.
I still say aunt I'm from Erie. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, we say
Connecticut's
auntie in
your aunt.
Connecticut.
Okay,
so.
okay.
But anyways, I had a client out there who had a junk room that literally is 20 years of them saying, oh, company's coming, and they just shoved stuff in there. Came home from a trip, didn't want to deal with it, threw it in this junk room. And so it took us 6 hours to pull everything out of this junk room and decide what to do with it, which thankfully most of it was not needed. You didn't see it in that amount of time.
Wow.
But that's just an example of not dealing with it in the moment instead of just putting the mail away or going through the junk mail and throwing it in the trash, which a lot of it was.
How do you if you have a room like that, it has a bunch of stuff in it, what are the questions you ask to determine what to do? Because I think you put off the decision because you don't know how to make it. Mm-hmm. Like, how do I know if I need this or not?
Well, I say if you haven't used it in 20 years or whatever, that's an extreme example,
Right.
real life, but extreme. But in all seriousness, even a client I was at this morning, she was like, well, they moved a year ago and they still have things in moving boxes. I'm like, well, have you missed it? Have you looked for
Right.
it? Because, I mean, you can get on a whole minimalist topic, which is not the goal for today, but
Yeah.
really, if you're not missing things, then why add to the day-to-day of what you have to deal with? We make, 60,000 decisions a day.
Yeah.
If you don't have to decide whether or not to put your laundry away because there's so few of it to put back, it's simple.
Yeah.
The more we can do to simplify our lives in our homes, the better off we're going to be. It's just
Yeah.
too much noise and chaos. Just the day-to-day of what we deal with in our phones, everything's so constant. Like, your home should just be calm.
Yeah, I agree. I think if there's always that, what it's called, feng shui, when things are put away, you relax.
Yeah.
And it's like you can walk and you know where it is.
Yes.
And you know what you have, how many you have of it or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was telling someone, if you don't know how many T-shirts you have too many. You should know how many shirts you have. And, I mean, you should be able to name them.
Yeah,
Because if you
know
can't,
if they're
you don't
missing.
need it.
Yeah. Yep.
And it seems like if you had the tools, which are the questions to ask yourself of whether something's needed or just wanted sometimes, like buying stuff. You buy it to.
Yes.
There's a like your therapist, because someone will go on Amazon, buy something because they think they need it,
Yeah.
and now they got to put it somewhere. And then how do you say to yourself, I don't need this, but I don't want to throw it away?
My favorite question is, what could I use instead? If you're going on Amazon, you're like, oh, I need a new,
Right.
I don't know, my husband just bought a meat thermometer the other day. We have other ones in our drawer, just not
Yeah.
as good. What could we just use instead of spending the $8 on Amazon to bring another thing back into our house?
Yeah.
Silly example, but all the time it's like, well, do I really need this?
Sometimes it's just hitting click that dopamine is like,
Yeah.
get it here.
Yep.
And that's, I think, if you don't address that core issue, which is
That's
where you
the
talk
thing.
about
It's
maybe
all-
a therapist.
Yeah, I think you're going to ask this later of other things that are coming up, but that's kind of one of my
Right.
next missions is how do we kind of end this consumerism and wanting to
yeah.
consume, and I got to have it because you have it. Well, you have an iPhone, I don't know what number we're on to now, so I got to get it too, and
Right,
your
yeah.
car's better than mine, and it's like, no, just be content with what you have and be content with less than that, because, this is maybe a little wooey, but life is so much more about this life is so much more than just these material items and having the next best thing, because that next best thing you have to maintain. you have to put back, you have to clean it, you have to do whatever. So you're really missing out on what life's supposed to be all about.
Yeah, I find enjoyment in owning more space.
Oh, I love
The
that.
space has more
Yeah.
value to me than the stuff that's in it sometimes.
Absolutely.
And just the room, the space to be able to move means more. I had in my business, it's a lot of electronic stuff, and it gets old fast.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to throw a camera away that's only like 10 years old, and you can't sell it. What it takes to sell it is not worth the time you're gonna like. If a camera I may have paid $800 for now is not worth $50.
Yeah.
Do I sell it? How much time is that going to take?
Right.
Trash it.
know.
I feel bad, but you got to take. There's an electrical dump. I take a lot. I've probably taken $100,000 worth of stuff.
Wow.
That I just can't use. It's useless. It's like tape machines. No one uses tape machines.
Right.
They took up so much space. I'm like, but it's valuable. I'm like, well, I may need to use the tape sometime. I'm like, you know what? There's probably somebody out here who has a tape machine. I'll hire them, but I'll have my space. I'll have the space where
and
it
that's
was.
the thing for the few times a year that you need something. Or, oh, we have, we always host Thanksgiving. I'm like, well, that's one time a year.
Right.
So maybe you can just borrow something from your neighbor or, just
Right.
be a little bit more, I don't know if it's frugal, but just practical.
Yeah.
We don't need to hold on to everything for every situation. There's a quote out there, too. If it costs less than $20 and you can replace it within 20 minutes, then get rid of it. Because if you really find yourself in a
Right.
pinch, then you run out to the hardware store or whatever and you grab it back.
Like the junk drawer.
Yes.
What is that?
I like to
Pens
call it a
that don't work?
convenience drawer.
Okay. If it's not a convenience drawer, yeah. If it's a junk drawer,
Yeah.
you got to fix it so it's a convenience drawer.
Exactly.
So it has a tape measure real quick and some scissors and some glue, and
Right.
that's all it needs.
Yep,
A
some
screwdriver
batteries.
maybe. Yeah.
Yep.
So does a lot of what you do, obviously, there's the consumer side, then there's the business side. But both places have humans in them.
Yes.
Are there things that you can help businesses with that you see consumers have the same issues and they take them to work? Do you have any special procedure? Do you work with businesses at all commercially?
We've done a few businesses, specifically ones that have like downsized into a smaller space post-COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Where they had these huge storage rooms and now they needed to consolidate things down. And I went through really my same process with them as I did any home. Again, have you used it? Do you need it? Is there something that could work instead? How can we pare this down? Because the more crap you shove in here, the harder it's going to be for all your field guys to come in and find what they need and get
Yeah.
out, and that's going to limit their efficiency. So it was really a very similar process. I think it's, at the end of the day, it's owning what you need, not too much more, and really knowing where that home that it goes back to is, which we do a lot of labeling for that. For kids, we'll do picture labels so that they know where their toys are meant to go. But the big goal, too, is the stuff has to be easy to put back. If the home is the top shelf, I'm 5
Right.
feet tall, and I have to get a step stool, you better believe it's not going back every
Right.
time.
I can understand
It's got to
that.
be simple.
I can understand that. So you think that you mentioned earlier about how you're really coaching people. You're coming in and you have to ask a lot of questions first. You would do the same thing with a business. You obviously, if it's a restaurant, you got to understand the process for the food and how often it comes in and how much you go through. Or if it's they have paint, how long does it last on the shelf? There's a lot of things that you don't know offhand when you're trying to work with a business. You got to ask.
I mean,
to
the
get
first
details.
almost hour of our meetings are typically just kind of Q&A and what does the day-to-day look like? And I was in an office this morning, I'm like, well, what are all these piles? I can't just come in and organize your papers. Like, you might have a system in here that's maybe not working for you, which is why you called me, but I don't want to just categorize things the way that I think they should be done because your brain's going to work different than mine. So we really have to get to understand how you're working and operating so I can provide a system that works for you. If everyone's brain worked like mine, I'd have no job.
Right,
And
right,
everyone's spaces would be, perfectly organized. But the way I do it isn't the only way to do it. So we
What
have
is
to find
what is
that.
the process of working with you like? Are there packages like you come in once a week? It's not like you're a maid, but do you create a system and then you're done? And how long does it take? Like your first is consultation, then second, and third. What do you do as the process for a client?
Yeah, so anybody that wants to work with us gives us a call. Typically, we start with a phone conversation. A lot of times we can give you a quote right over the phone, especially if you send us a picture or video ahead of our call. So we can really see, people say, oh, my kitchen's a disaster, and then they'll send me a picture. I'm like, it looks like my kitchen. It looks fine. Everyone has their own. Adjectives are not really helpful in this line of work.
Yeah.
So we ask to see a photo before we jump on a call or a video, panoramic of the room. And then we'll be able to just really give some quick solutions right then and there and kind of show what value we have, what we think, ask some of those questions. And we'll schedule a team to go out. So it's not a straightforward answer because there's a lot of variables. It might just be your kitchen. It might be your attic to your basement and everything in between. For those bigger jobs, we'll send someone out to do an in-person consultation and really walk through every space and get an idea of what each room will take us to organize. And if we need to bring product in to make it more efficient, we'll come prepared with all of that on our first session. But sometimes we're in and out in a day and we never see that client again. Other times we're there maybe once a week to really get, we'll go room to room to room to really get everything organized. And then we have clients that we come back on weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. Quarterly is most common.
Yeah.
And it's typically what I try to push, especially for families. It's like you got seasonal clothing coming out. We got to put the winter stuff away. Yeah, the decoration. So let us just maintain the storage room that we created and so beautifully. Let us take down your Halloween stuff and pull Christmas out for you. You can decorate. We can decorate for you too if you want. That's also a service we offer. But I think most people kind of enjoy doing that part. But then you dread at your Christmas tree at the end of December, you're like, oh.
Yeah, we're going to call it. If you could describe, sometimes when you're talking with business coaches, they'll ask you, when you're trying to market, they'll ask you, describe your best client, and then how you got that best client, and how to find that best client. Now, who is the best client for you? I mean, there's a small and there's a big. Everyone wants the big ones, and no one wants the small ones. But is there a niche or type of, if someone calls me and says X, that's my client.
Yeah.
That those are the regular bread and butter. I can help them the most. There's a huge gap that I can help fill. Not the little ones or the huge ones, but what's that avatar look like?
Yeah, for us, it's families. It's really, and I think part of it's my stage of life right now. It's very relatable for me, so I enjoy working with them. But there's a need. I think we're all busier than we've ever been before, and the amount of kids' activities and opportunities are, in my opinion, ridiculous. So everybody's running all of the time, and I think mom specifically is who I target most often. The women of the house are who reaches out for saying, I just can't take this anymore. I need help.
Just sometimes the husbands call on behalf
Sometimes
of the wife.
Sometimes,
like, I've got this.
Or they're like, my wife would love this. You have gift cards? I'm like, yes, we do.
And then the wife calls, my husband is a mess.
Yeah.
You got to deal with that too.
Well, it's the kids. The kids destroy everything. They don't put anything back. So that's really who we target helping the most. I do think we make the biggest impact in a lot of those houses, especially it's like middle-aged kids, like maybe 8 to 10, 6 to 10, where all the baby stuff's still lingering.
Oh, yeah.
There's
when
so
to
much
get rid of
purging that can be done that it just immediately lightens up that house. And then we can put the systems in place once all the extra's out of there. I think that's the most
So the first stage
feeling.
is getting rid of stuff you don't need.
Yeah.
Asking the tough questions, but asking them, when have you used it last? And if they say, well, what if something happens and I need it? And you say,
oh, can you get it in 20 minutes?
you get it in 20 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes people have these huge houses and there's plenty of storage. I'm like, look, you got the room to store it. We can store it. Sometimes those questions are more critical when there's less space. But at the end of the day, why are we storing stuff to just store stuff?
Yeah. I had to say time, space, and money. Did I tell you this? We met at the coffee shop.
I don't know.
And that's my TSM philosophy, time, space, and money. How you manage each determines how much you have of each.
Okay.
So, and someone was talking about, like, why do people who win the lottery always end up broke after that? It's because they're applying the same management techniques that got them broke, so now they just have more money now. So more money was a temporary solution to a long-term problem. Mm-hmm. It just took longer. So the same thing is with a house. If you're out of space and you get a bigger house, well, it's a temporary solution to a long-term problem. Yeah. Eventually, even though you think you solved the problem with a bigger house, the same decisions are being made.
That's so
You're
true.
not getting rid of stuff, and now it's full. Now what? A bigger house?
And
How
people
about
call
fix
me,
the problem?
if you don't fix this, I think we're going to have to move. I'm like, you do not need to move. I'll look at these houses. I'm like, your house is big enough.
It'll be
Trust
full
me.
soon.
Yes.
Again, it's not going
that's
to
the
solve
thing.
it, right?
And that's the other. I mean, I guess it's a good problem. I shouldn't complain about this. It keeps me employed. But,
right.
We do it with clients, and then we go back a year or two later, and we do it again, which is fine. But then, to me, that's where this bigger piece needs to come into play of, like, we really need to get to the core of why this is happening. And do you want to keep calling me every year? That's fine. But do you want to also change some of your habits so that you're not in this perpetual cycle?
Maybe they're happy having you come in. They don't want to deal with their problem. Like,
I guess that's
tell
fine
me with
too.
It. I have a coach. I want a coach.
Yeah.
So where do you see your business going in 5 years? More people, bigger region, nationally or
yeah,
regionally,
I think
or what?
more people. Something we've talked about in the past was like franchising. One of my old assistants decided to go back to school to become a physical therapist, but before she made that decision, she was going to take our business to Sarasota. So I thought Sunny Spaces Sarasota had a a really nice ring to
Oh,
it.
nice, yeah.
So
Could visit there and it's a tax write-off and all
exactly.
that stuff. Yeah.
Best beaches in America.
Yep.
But I do think something like that is in the future, franchising, or I'd love to get a New England branch so I have more of an excuse to get back home.
Oh, yeah.
That's in my head. But in the more short term, I'm going to start offering just virtual coaching. So really just talking through why you have these problems, and then we can offer you the advice of how to execute. So if you live in New York or somewhere not local, we can help you as well. If you live here, we can also send our team to service you. But you're telling me that you're willing and ready to have this coaching, because not everybody is, and to sit down and have that conversation with me multiple times. Until we really solve the problem for you.
So being a coach and a business owner, you're helping them, two ways, the same way, but now you're coaching them.
But I think it gets to a deeper level, which excites me.
Could take some psychiatry classes or some psychology classes.
Yeah.
Gets too big. Now, I was going to ask you one more question. If you decide to go to the New England area, what's your first step?
Ooh, good question. So finding somebody, because I said it to my dad this week, and I was like, if I have a cousin, I'm like, I just wish she was a little bit more. She'd be a great organizer, but I don't think she cares to run the business side of it. And for someone to be remote, I would handle a lot of the business, but they'd have to go seek the business. They'd have to make the connections and go to the meetings and join the chamber where I met you and put yourself out there. I can't do that from here.
Yeah, you'd be actually doing all of their marketing, and all they want to do is just the work and not have to do anything other than just
go in and do the job. So
you need someone who's kind of a little marketing, a little networker, and a worker at the same time that can bring in the business and not just wait for
maybe
the phone
someone
call.
who's entrepreneurial minded but doesn't want to take the risk.
Yeah, I like that.
So people first. I feel like we have the processes and the protocols in place here that we would easily just copy and paste over there.
Yeah.
Just have to have the right person.
Yeah, franchising would be a good idea. So like in the end, it's going to be you that they like and the way you operate. Even though there's a bunch of organizers out there, there's a bunch of everything out there. There's a bunch of pizzas out there, but eventually you find a pizza that you like. You go
all
with
the same
that.
place every time.
Yeah, great. Now, how can anyone find you? Like if they wanted to get you, just your website? Tell me about your website.
Yeah, our website, you can do sunnySpacesOrganizing.com, and then we're on Instagram, Facebook at Sunny Spaces Organizing. Try to keep it simple and consistent. Those are the best places.
Social media?
Reach us. Social media. Yeah.
Do you give out tips on social media, like on TikTok or Instagram?
I haven't explored TikTok yet. I feel like how many platforms can one person manage?
Yeah.
But we'll do some tips. We do a weekly blog, so we always post the link to that. It goes to our website, but we'll post it on Facebook and Instagram, so you can just click through to that. That's where most of our tips come from. I feel like we like to give tips on Instagram too, but it feels more limited, so perhaps we're a little more verbose.
A blog is actually, when you go to TikTok, it's just a video version of your blog.
That's true.
If you just put that into a visual.
Coming from the video guy here.
Right. Because that's what I'll start with the concept, and then I'll write the blog, and then I'll make it a LinkedIn post, and then I make it a TikTok discussion, and then it becomes a podcast if it's even more bigger. But then I've taken pieces of the podcast and made them TikTok. So
interesting.
You can take like this, even if you had a podcast, an organizing podcast, you could do something like that, and then take pieces of that. Like you had a guest on it said something great. It's on TikTok,
Interesting.
And it's just there's so many different mediums. Yeah, it's hard to keep track of them all.
It is. That's what it comes
unless
down
you hire
to.
someone to do it. There's only so much you can do as one individual.
Yeah, no, that was the first thing I outsourced was social media.
Yeah.
Like that to me does not bring me joy, to quote Marie Kondo. I was like, get rid of it.
Right.
We need it. It's important. Most of our business comes from Facebook, but it is not what I enjoy doing, that creative side. Nope. So that was the first thing I got assistance to do.
I can appreciate that. Yeah, well, that's how they get a hold of you. So we know how to get a hold of you now, and I appreciate you being on and sharing those tips.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have any tips that you could give us before we go? Like, how do I organize is there a way to organize a refrigerator? Is there something like a pantry?
Yes, I was going to say pantries are my favorite.
Oh,
so fridge, here's some good tips for a refrigerator. So tonight's trash night for us. So I will go through our fridge tonight and make sure anything that's like an old leftover is out. Also put your leftovers in clear containers, please, so you know what's in there.
Nice.
You can also schedule, this is a whole nother topic, but I have a leftover night is always on our calendar. It's usually the night of trash night. It's like either we're eating it or it's gone
gone,
tonight. So
right.
things aren't growing weird, funky stuff in the back of your fridge. It's a good time too to just like do a quick check on expiration dates or things that have been in there a long time. But I do recommend the fridge bins. I don't think you need to take every egg out of your carton and put them in those egg organizers. I know people like the visibility of that. I just feel like that's wasted time.
Yeah.
But when my kids were little, I would have like a kid bin so I could easily pull down their stuff to make a meal fast for them. I have fruit in a bin ready to go. So just keeping I guess it all comes down to categories.
Yeah.
Like your categories together and just always knowing what's in there. And use clear bins so that you don't have to question what's way in the back.
I hate to have to open a bin, especially if there's something on top of it.
Yeah.
Take it off and open that bin.
Yeah.
See what's in there.
Too
I
much work.
appreciate you being
Yeah.
here and sharing those tips with us. I think your journey to entrepreneurship was not, I don't want to say common, but I think a lot of people have the same issues, overcome them differently. And I think what makes entrepreneurs different is they don't see them as problems. They see them as like an obstacle that they can overcome.
Yeah, opportunity.
And it's an opportunity, exactly. And I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you accepted the invitation to be on here today. I think it's a good podcast. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.